One narrow waterway, 1/5 of the world's oil, and now, NATO warships are quietly weighing whether to enter the Strait of Hormuz as Iran warns the Gulf remains under its full-strength control. As tankers vanish and markets tremble, the question is no longer if the crisis spreads, but who fires first. NATO members are discussing the possibility of deploying forces to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz if the strategic waterway remains blocked. According to officials cited by Bloomberg, the discussions come as the ongoing US-Israeli war with Iran continues to disrupt global energy markets and deepen fears of wider regional escalation. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas shipments, making it one of the most strategically important maritime choke points on Earth. Officials familiar with the talks said several NATO members support the idea of helping commercial shipping transit the strait, but the alliance has not yet reached unanimous agreement.
We need a lot of resources and munitions and the ability to ramp up production quickly. And we just don't have that, and we need it very fast. The ongoing war in Iran, which has choked global supply chains of oil, gas, and other commodities from the Gulf, as a resultant closure of the Strait of Hormuz, is a prime example of why NATO should have increased its weapons output some time ago.
The NATO source warned that the Iran conflict and the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz have exposed weaknesses in Western military preparedness and weapons production capacity.
Indeed, this is about Iran, but in fact it's also a realization that we need to be prepared for simultaneous conflicts. We need this at scale, and that's certainly one of the points Saussure will be making to allied military chiefs.
Bloomberg reported that NATO allies had previously insisted they would only intervene after active fighting ended and as part of a broader international coalition. However, soaring oil prices, disrupted shipping lanes, and economic pressure across Europe have reportedly shifted internal discussions. At the same time, Iranian officials are warning that Tehran views the Strait of Hormuz as a permanent strategic asset, fully under Iranian control.
Iran would pursue its legal rights in the waterway with full strength and will show no leniency toward anyone in this matter. The waterway constituted a permanent strategic position with an instrumental role in broader geopolitical equations. We have tried during this period to act in line with proper management while preserving our authority.
Iranian lawmaker Ebrahim Azizi said Tehran considers the strait not just a shipping corridor, but a geopolitical and military pressure point.
The Strait of Hormuz was not merely a maritime transit route, but a strategic achievement for the Islamic Republic. The strait is a full-fledged economic, political, and military lever that would forever remain under the management and control of the courageous and powerful Iranian nation.
Azizi also warned against hostile actions aimed at restricting Iran's influence and sovereignty in the region.
Any hostile action or attempt to limit Iran's influence and sovereignty in the region would be met with a decisive and powerful response. Iran is capable of safeguarding national interests. We will continue our path with strength and authority, and no threat or sanction will weaken the resolve of the Iranian nation.
The latest developments highlight growing fears that the Iran conflict could evolve into a wider confrontation involving NATO forces, while the global economy faces mounting pressure from one of the most critical disruptions to energy trade in decades. On May 13th, US President Donald Trump will land in Beijing for a 2-day summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It will be the first time any American president has set foot on Chinese soil since Trump's own visit there in 2017. Nearly a decade later, the world looks radically different, and what happens in those 2 days could shape a great deal of what comes next. The lead-up to this meeting has been anything but smooth. Trump was originally supposed to make this trip in late March, but the war in the Middle East had other plans. A joint American-Israeli military campaign against Iran launched in late February, sent shockwaves across the globe, and Beijing found itself caught directly in the fallout. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil that flows through the Strait of Hormuz. When that strait effectively choked, shut under a combination of military operations and dueling blockades, it hit China where it hurts most, its energy supply. And yet, despite that pressure, Beijing has been measured, deliberate, and by its own account, firmly on the side of peace. China's ambassador to the United States, Xi Feng, sat down with Newsweek on May 5th for a wide-ranging and revealing conversation. His words offer one of the clearest windows yet into how Beijing is thinking about this summit and about the broader arc of the US-China relationship.
In an increasingly turbulent world, the strategic value of China-US relations becomes more prominent. A stable and constructive China-US relationship not only serves the fundamental interests of both our peoples, but also meets the shared expectation of the international community.
On the Iran war specifically, Beijing has been vocal. Xi Jinping announced a 4-point peace proposal last month that has since received backing from Tehran. China also joined Pakistan, which has been quietly mediating US-Iran talks, to launch a separate 5-point peace initiative in late March. None of this has stopped the fighting, but it signals that China sees itself as an indispensable voice in any eventual settlement.
For people of all countries, peace is paramount, life is most precious, and stability is most needed. China always follows an independent foreign policy of peace and opposes the arbitrary use of force in international relations. From the first day of the fighting, China has steadfastly stood on the side of peace and has been committed to promoting talks for peace and the cessation of hostilities.
And then there is the question that has reportedly prompted Trump to call Xi directly in recent weeks: allegations that China has been supplying Iran with military assistance. Beijing rejected this flatly. Ambassador Xie called the reports fabricated, and his language was pointed.
Unfortunately, some individuals seem to feel the world is not chaotic enough and have spread rumors that China has benefited from the conflict and that China is supporting Iran militarily. Their aim is to smear China, incite confrontation between China and the US, and sabotage bilateral high-level interactions. All of this is fake news driven by ulterior motives. For China and the rest of the world alike, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the disruption of the international energy market, and the shocks to global industrial and supply chains are a disaster. This is a war that should not have happened and should be immediately stopped.
Whatever one makes of that denial, the pressure this conflict has placed on both Washington and Beijing has created, paradoxically, an opening, a shared interest in ending it. And that shared interest may be one of the most useful things both leaders bring with them into the room. Trump, for his part, has remained publicly warm toward Xi. Last week he described the Chinese president as, quote, a good man, a smart man, with whom he has a very good relationship. He even claimed with characteristic flourish that Xi would give him a big, fat hug when they meet. Whether that warmth translates into movement on the substantive issues on the table remains the central question. Beyond the Iran crisis, the Beijing summit is carrying the full weight of almost every friction point in the US-China relationship: trade, technology, Taiwan, and a deeper argument about whose vision of world order gets to prevail.
The upcoming summit in Beijing will be a successful one, which will chart the right course for the future development of China-US relations and pave the way for making the list of dialogue and cooperation longer and advancing the positive agenda while shortening the list of problems and properly managing differences so that we can not only promote the steady, sound and sustainable development of bilateral relations this year.
And then there is Taiwan, the issue that never quite leaves the room, no matter what else is on the agenda. Trump has historically pushed the limits of established American policy on Taiwan, accepting a call from Taiwan's then-president after his 2016 election, openly questioning the One China policy and approving an $11 billion arms deal for the island in December. Ambassador Tsai raised the stakes around this with a pointed historical comparison.
Just imagine, if a foreign country sold weapons to a US state seeking independence and even sent a leader to visit the state to show support regardless of the US federal government's strong opposition, could the American people accept it? President Abraham Lincoln stated that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and chose to fight to keep the country united. I believe the American people, who faced the danger of division and had a civil war in history, can understand China's will and determination to safeguard national unity.
What makes all of this more consequential than a typical diplomatic visit is the broader moment China finds itself in. A recent Gallup survey found global approval of China edging past the United States for the first time in 8 years. Inside the US, the Pew Research Center reported in March that American public perception of China is also improving. Phenomena like China maxing, a social media trend of Americans embracing Chinese culture and lifestyle, have captured mainstream attention,